The world is facing an unprecedented climate crisis. The effects of climate change are already being felt around the globe, from extreme weather events to rising sea levels. These impacts are not only disrupting ecosystems but also threatening the very livelihoods of millions of people. Nigeria, as a developing nation, is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The country is already experiencing desertification, drought, and floods, all of which are worsened by climate change. These impacts are putting strain on Nigeria's economy and infrastructure, and they are also displacing communities and increasing poverty. However, Nigeria is also a country with immense potential to play a leading role in the fight against climate change. The country has a wealth of renewable energy resources, including solar, wind, and hydropower. Nigeria also has a large and growing population, which provides a strong foundation for a green economy. Tonight on Daily Politics, we'll be focusing on the ongoing 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference, also known as the Conference of Parties, and how Nigeria, and by extension Africa, can gradually key into the global plans for a sustainable future. And to help viewers understand the issues, we have joining us virtually from the United States of America, Akintunde Babatunde. He's the Director of Programs at the Center for Journalism Innovation and Development, CGID. Welcome to the program, Mr. Babajide.
Yeah, hello. It's nice to be there. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, we're happy having you.
Right. So,
Yes.
I guess, do you want to go ahead and?
Of course, the attention of the whole world is in Dubai. Is your attention also there?
Of course.
And what are the,
Of course.
deliverables? Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I like to say that it's the time of the year where almost everybody interested in development and sustainability, is focused on COP, right? The Conference of Parties. So for starters, if you don't know what it means when you hear Conference of Parties, it simply means, climate change, the United Nations climate change, that's a annual convening that brings together governments around the world, stakeholders around the world, scientists from around the world, private sectors from around the world, representing countries and industries to talk about the global race to fight climate change. And it is happening for the 28th time. That's where you have it as COP, 28, right? In Dubai. And it started on Thursday and it would go around for 12 days, 12 full days. And, every year, climate change conversation at COP always happens, always bringing forward, what was discussed the previous year, right? So it's always like, what did we discuss last year? Last year was COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, right? And so this year, and of course, that was where, a lot of conversations that are happening today, in Dubai, COP28, that's where all of those came from. But of course, what happened last year, also came from what happened previous years, right? That's pretty much like the conversation on climate on COP28, and talk about the very important issues. I will speak specifically to what is important to developing countries and what is also important to Nigeria, right? So,
go ahead. Yes.
One of those is the loss and damage fund, which was, of course, operationalized last year at COP 2027. The loss and damage fund, was adopted at COP, just like the last minute adoption at COP 27 in Egypt. But it has been operationalized this year. And now we've been receiving a lot of pledges and, commitment to the loss and damage facility. And quite about $400 million, have been pledged to go into the to the loss and damage facility. And, the question is, what does this mean and why is it important, right? Loss and damage simply means dealing with, just like the name, dealing with the loss and damages that countries that have been affected by climate change are facing, right? And a very clear understanding of that would be that this time last year in Nigeria, a lot of states were flooded, right? And we recorded quite a lot of very unfortunate, reports from last year. Pretty much about more than a million people, displaced. Thousands injured. Property loss. Farmlands destroyed, farm produce destroyed. It led to a lot of death also and injuries. So what that means is that was because of rainfall, heavy rainfall that the capacity could not contain, and that led to flooding, right? And that led to a lot of losses. And so for incidences like that, are what the loss and damage fund aims to deal with, to say how many countries are suffering from the vulnerabilities of climate change, right? How many countries have disasters that have been recorded as a result of climate change, and how do we, effectively build those countries to be back, and also build resilient structures that would guide against future occurrences, right? We also have issues of drought and desertification, where communities where they are not able to. They are in some communities that are experiencing heavy rainfall, and some communities are not even experiencing it at all, right? So you have desertification, land degradation, and those challenges. And the point is that how do we rebuild those communities to be resilient and to be able to live the normal life, just before we have challenges of changing weather pattern. And the loss and damage facility, has been designed as an instrument where every country that are developed countries that are financially buoyant would come together to that pool of funds, so that developing countries that are at the highest risk of climate change get support from that process to rebuild from damages, and also to build structures against future damages. That's one of the very important conversation happening at COP28, right? And the second one is about energy transition, equitable and just energy transition, which is a lot of economies are built on fossil fuel, right? The oil and gas industry. And the question, and the research has shown, that we cannot continue this way, because the reason why there's change in weather pattern, climate is changing, has been because of the activities of humans, right? And a lot of the human activities, industrial activities that have further complicated the current climate change is the fossil fuel industry. The fossil fuel industry has contributed a lot, right? Burning of fossil fuel, coal, and the likes. And the question has been that if we need to regulate the climate and make things better, then the current economic framework that is built on fossil fuel needs to be reviewed. And the question is that because we cannot stop, our way of life, then we need to think of a green energy transition. That is, what are the current mode of living, of industrial engagement that is reliant on fossil fuel? Can we think of alternative energy source that is green, renewable, and better, and not harmful to the environment? And that is when the conversation around energy transition comes to the picture. But the point is that, can we talk about energy transition on the same level with countries that have built, that are developed, from the fossil fuel business over the years? Nigeria, for instance, we all know what the challenge is when it comes to the economy and the impact of the oil sector on the Nigerian economy. And the question is, if Nigeria, of course, at COP26, the former president, former President Muhammadu Buhari had made commitment that Nigeria would go net zero in 2060. And what that simply means is that everything Nigeria would go renewable by 2060. And that means Nigeria would stop the business of oil and gas and oil business, and go green, go renewable. And the question that is very central and important for the conversation at COP28 is that, how do we ensure that Nigeria transition from the current, oil-based economy, arguably to a more green and renewable economy. And that's where the interesting point about Nigeria's policy and plans comes into the picture, because Nigeria had released the energy transition plan that aims to decarbonize the economy and get us to achieving net zero by 2060. But it comes with a lot of financial need. The current estimate is that we would need about $10 billion annually, up on the 2060. That's about $400 billion, to be able to achieve the energy transition plan. That is one. Then overall, for us to get to net zero, we would need about $1.9 trillion. That is Nigeria. So I'm talking about Nigeria. So that's the plan. And, we haven't been able, I'm not sure, the data shows that we haven't been able to raise up to $10 billion annually. So that means we have deficit already, because energy transition plan was released. The first comment was made in COP26. Then it was released, that was in 2021. Then last year, the energy transition plan was released, and it was unveiled. And the question is that how much do we need to be able to achieve the plans of the energy transition plan? $10 billion annually. And we also need, for us to get net zero, estimates, the financial estimate is about $1.9 trillion. So at COP28, the conversation should be, one, how do we attract investment that would get us, to achieve some of the ambitions and the plans that we have captured in Nigeria's energy transition plan? That is one. And secondly, is that how do we seek partnerships and commitment that would get Nigeria to rebuild the destroyed communities that are vulnerable? Already we have communities that are washing away as a result of sea surge and sea level rise. You have evidence at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. We've conducted research, and we've seen communities in Ayetoro community, for instance, that is at the risk of going extinct. Save a last minute intervention. We've seen communities Abari in Delta State that is also going extinct. You've seen a lot of communities that are at the coastal communities there that are at the risk of extinction. And the question is that we need financial investment to build one shore protection project that would guide against sea incursion, right? We need investment in that level. Then we also need families, communities that are already affected. We need to resettle them. We need to build structures. We also have communities that are at risk of the next flooding, right? We need to get them out of where they currently are and get them to somewhere else, so we don't run the risk of having a country of internally displaced persons, right? And so these are the financial investments that we need to attract a COP to be able to build a better country.
Okay, good. I am highly impressed by the way you dissected the whole matter and reducing it to the understanding of ordinary Nigerian, because in the last couple of days, many people were actually appalled. They have lost out completely as to what is the essence of the whole conference of yes. Now, yes, but with all sense of modesty, do you think Nigeria will get it right by 2060? I am asking this because have we got the existing climate protocol right? From the time we got independence to this moment, have we got it right? Now that we are still talking about even fixing our refineries to get oil. Oil is still a problem now. And we got oil 1959, right? Up till now, we didn't get that sector right. Is it possible for us to get the green energy right in the next 30 years? Yes, and achieve net zero.
Right. So, thank you very much. And, at COP26, when the president first made the commitment, I was on a show in Scotland, and the first question that I asked was that we need a clear path, a clear plan that would chart how we would transition from the current fossil fuel-based economy to a green and a renewable future, right? And I think same with the very many sectors in Nigeria that need attention. I think that if we decide today, Nigeria, let me be clear, we are not short of policies when it comes to these issues. Climate change, we have a climate change law in the country, we have an energy transition plan. So we already have those policies. But what we need is clear and intentional, decision that would get us on the right path, right? Nigeria is, we've got a lot. I mean, we've not gotten the oil sector right in terms of, the result, in terms of real impact on development. We've not gotten it right. Data shows that, we have millions of people who are multidimensionally poor. Nigeria is still not there, when it comes to developed, right? So the question is that if we did not get the oil sector right, is nature, offering us an opportunity to get on the right path with green energy transition? And how intentional and how sincere would our leaders and every other stakeholders, because it's not just about the government now, the private sector, the civil society, the media, international partners, how intentional and sincere are we going to be in setting a sustainable future, a green and sustainable future for our country, right? Nigeria, we are blessed with abundant resources that is needed for a green transition. A few months ago, it was in the news that Elon Musk wanted to do business with Nigeria and get lithium minerals, that is very needed for electric vehicle and other things, right? But the question is that how are we able to effectively have a proper governance system within our green mineral sector that will ensure that licenses and processes within that system is transparent, and we have an effective governing system that would ensure that whatever we get from this sector is used to build a sustainable country. That's another point. Another point is about infrastructure. How much infrastructure do we have that is needed to get, to effectively, catapult us into a green future? And we also have to ask ourselves, there have been arguments on gas as a transition fuel. And the point is that we also have to ask ourselves, how many investors are interested in coming to Nigeria to build that infrastructure and then start thinking of waiting until when it becomes like obsolete asset and the likes. So the point really is that, one, we need to ask ourselves, where are we with oil sector exploration? Can we immediately ensure that we block all loopholes when it comes to losses, theft, misappropriation, and make sure that we are able to latch on whatever we are able to get within the time frame we have remaining, before before oil becomes, become a stranded, resource in the world, because at some point, it will become a stranded, resource, and the world will move on to some green and renewable. How do we ensure that whatever we get from this is used to build solid structures where we can effectively harness our green minerals?
Okay, the next question, yes, the next question I want to have your take. Yes, the next question I want to have your take is whether Nigerian leaders actually being fair to the system and to the citizens for putting themselves at par with maybe industrialized nations. There are countries, if you say Germany, United States, UK, and what have you, they have gone very far in technology and in industrialization, and they are craving to maintain the temperature below 2 degrees centigrade, right? Is Nigeria being fair to be pairing itself with these countries and even going ahead to give a timeline as to how to meet up with this challenge?
Right. First to say that whether or not, whether we like it or not, the impact, the devastating impact of climate change is already impacting Nigeria adversely. That's one. Nigeria is a is a major player in world conversation because Nigeria is a large country, right? Is a major country. And what that means is that we can leverage our superpower to negotiate and demand commitment. And I think that is where we are not getting it right, right? I don't agree that Nigeria should not be part of global conversation on climate change. If anything, our voice needs to be heard loud and clear. But we need to go to the negotiation block. And unfortunately, the way the negotiation, ACOP is designed, it's you have that's a fact. If we want to start talking about negotiation, it's a different conversation entirely. So Nigeria does not go ahead and negotiate like a major country. So there is the African group of negotiators where Nigeria sent a representative to that part, right? That group and all of those things. But the point is that is where we have a lot of partnership meetings, bilateral meetings, and also conversations where Nigeria can go and say, you know what, we are planning this in the country and we need investment, we need commitment. And I think if you've been following the conversation at COP, you will see that even from COP26, a lot of countries, South Africa, for instance, had made commitment, gotten a lot of investment, that would help them in their green energy transition process. So the question really is that whether or not the commitment we make, whether or not we can use our power as a major country to get the right to attract the right investment into Nigeria and to convince international partners that there is a better environment where the business will thrive. And of course, it has been clear that there is a market in Nigeria and in Africa when it comes to renewable energy. There is a clear, we have a lot of opportunities, that we can latch on, right? There's a market, there is the need, there's a demand. And what that means is that any country, any investor coming to Nigeria to invest in the green economy is coming around and they won't be stranded and they won't run at a loss because we have the market.
And this is where,
But the question is that how much are we ready to pull our weight to make the right demands and ensure that we bargain and negotiate in a way that will benefit Nigeria.
And that is the last question I wanted. And that is the last question I wanted to ask you as to what will be your advice to the federal government, to the state governors, and to local government areas in Nigeria to subdue their expectation. To lower their pride and make good use of the available resources that we have now so that we can start from somewhere, talking about the wind, talking about the hydro, and talking about the solar. In less than 1 minute, what is your advice to these our leaders?
Okay, I think we should go with our superpower. First is that we need to educate, before I go there, we need to educate, government at all levels on the risk and the opportunities. That is one. Because a lot of government officials, if they don't know what the risks are and the opportunities that we have, then it's difficult to then even say you want to make arguments or bargain. That is one. We need to invest in educating, ourselves at that level. The second point is that Nigeria have abundant renewable resources that we can, that we need to attract the right investment for a green transition. And what that means is that we need to make that clear. If you make that clear and we attract the right investment, then it makes sense for us, to think of a renewable,
Okay, then finally, Mr. Babatunde,
okay.
Finally, do you think it's possible for Nigeria in the foreseeable future to do away with fossil fuel?
I will answer that question. That by the time a time is coming, we very much continue. We need to. That's why, in the national determined contribution, you have timeline, short term. You have the immediate, the short term, the mid-term, and the long-term ambition, right? So the point is that at some point, the world, the demand for fossil fuel may no longer be fashionable. And currently, you will notice that the customers, those who buy Nigeria's oil, for fuel, we are having a declining base, with the way where we are able to sell our oil, because a lot of those countries that are customers, they are either moving renewable, or they are either like having some new customers. So
Yes.
what happens is what would happen is that you would it will be a case where we would have oil in abundance, but we won't be able to sell.
Thank you very much.
That's what will happen.
Meaning
so
we have to face the
it's important for
reality.
us to think of the future and imagine a way that we can play with the current conversation globally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akintunde Babatunde, the Director of Programs at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. I like your last point that we must prepare, because the fossil fuel will never be fashionable in the coming years. Thank you very much for being with us, and we hope you join us again some other time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes, we've been with Babatunde. As I said, he joins us virtually from the United States of America. We'll now take a short break, and when we return, another guest waiting for all of us. Welcome back. If you are just joining, you are watching Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow the conversation across our social platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and watch us live on YouTube. The large size of the delegation has been criticized by some environmental activists and experts who argue that it is unnecessary and wasteful. They say that the delegation to Dubai, of course, could have been smaller and more representative of Nigerian society, and that the money spent on the delegation could have been better used to support climate action in Nigeria. The Nigerian government has defended the size of the delegation, saying that only a handful of the 1,411 Nigerian delegates who registered to attend the COP28 climate summit in Dubai are sponsored by the federal government. It said a bulk of the contingents comprise private sector players, such as business people, civil society organizations, and delegates from Nigeria's oil-producing Niger Delta region. However, critics say that the government is not being transparent about the delegation, and that they have not provided a clear justification for the large size of the contingent. And to share perspective on this, we have joining us virtually Dr. Salahuddin Hashim. He's a public commentator. Welcome to the program, Dr. Salahuddin.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, Nigeria was boiling throughout yesterday when it emerged that 1,411 people, departed the shores of the country to UAE for the conference. Was the anger justified?
Of course, it is very justified, particularly at a time where unemployment is on the rise, and we have a lot of decaying infrastructure, worsening poverty, and then of course at the time where we have just removed subsidy, and Nigerians are groaning and grinning, and of course at the time where cost of living is almost taking out the life of the living also. So typically this put together would actually trigger the kind of public anger and outrage that we saw, and of course we can then justify that fact. But I think, again, it is very important to be able to do a thorough forensic analysis of that list to be able to really determine whether or not what government had said was correct or not. And that is simply because this is a sector where I have some vast level of understanding as to how participation should be. I was supposed to be there as a matter of fact, but of course, for some other exigencies.
Yes.
Some of my colleagues in the Niger Delta, a number of them are on ground, and they are supported by different funding streams. And then, of course, we have seen a number of private sector colleagues who are also on ground. and this funding is not coming from the state. So it is good to be able to look at, is it the entire participants from Nigeria that is actually categorized in this particular landscape. So it is good to know, and then of course to determine. And then having said that, the rising nature of Nigeria government expenditure is actually on the rise. And this is where the advisory to the president must be kept very clear, that he should be aware of those people who look around the corridors in the State House, just trying to fish out of the troubled waters. And then, of course, forensic and fiscal data have also shown very clearly that the growth in this kind of spending does not translate meaningfully to any economic performance. And this, for me, is simply put, Nigeria in itself does not have a clear, homegrown national action plan on climate action. So what exactly are you having that kind of large contingent to do? I have seen that even the Inspector General of Police is even there. A lot of government agencies and government representatives who have no business in that place actually on ground. And that, for me, is the fourth line. What are the economic performance that this particular trip is going to translate into? We need to find that connection, and we must be able to find this year-on-year kind of rise in the kind of expenditure that consistently reduces the level of value that this translates into the lives of average Nigerian. We must be very careful. The president and his handlers must see this and find a way to just oppose and say, look, this is not the kind of practice and this is not the way to go. For me, this is uncalled for, and there's a need to do a review and publish and make public that list and let us know if indeed those were people who benefited from government coffers or not.
Why are Nigerians obsessed with traveling abroad, especially government officials? At the slightest provocation, let me put it this way, they all japa, albeit temporarily, and not under the guise of holiday. They just leave the country. Is it that the atmospheric condition in Nigeria is so terrible that, you know, they are just going because of the Estacot? Because I saw, you know, Nigerians, some have already carried out fact check that, you know, if you're a permanent secretary or director, your Estacot is around $900. You know, a minister is around $1,000 or $1,200, yeah. Senate president and all that. Up to local government chairman, we've seen it around $400. Is it the Estacot that is actually triggering these mass outflows at the slightest provocation?
You know that there is a political economy to trips like this. It is only that is the only incentive that drives people to want to be part of these kinds of business. And of course, for people who have personal business to take care of, they leverage on government taking care of accommodation and of course return tickets and their extra code to be able to attend to their own personal business. So this for me is something that is very worrisome, that I also think we need to pay a lot of attention to. And there is also the component that deals very clearly how over the years government has not indeed made any marginal progress when it comes to the issue of infrastructure. I'll give you one instance. I've had the opportunity to be in Brussels once, and there's a Nigerian delegation that was supposed to be there to basically look at some of the gas agreements, WTO, and be part of these global concerns around protocols on trade. And then, of course, because I was there as an observer within the civil society community, when it was time that resolution, when the discussion was going on, the entire Nigerian seats were vacant. There was nobody there. Most of them were in their hotels, and most of them went shopping. And then, of course, discussion went into late afternoon, and then by the time it was done, the resolution was actually going around for people to sign in. And that was when Nigerian delegations were running in and sweating, just sat down hurriedly, and they all just signed up to a conversation they were not part of. And that tells you very clearly how we commit ourselves to global protocols that we never knew how it all emanated from. We don't have understanding of how it all came about, but we signed it and commit the country into those kind of things. And by the time we're done, we saw most of them carrying shopping bags and shopping malls, and they were even discussing how they went different places, taking pictures and all of that. So there is an egocentric nature that comes with this kind of activity. And then, of course, it is not particularly having any connection with anything that deals with governance. But most importantly, it is comparatively trying to just project that gluttony part of a public office, typically, in parentheses, how it affects us as a country. So there's a need for us to be able to develop and establish a sustainable level of prudence and discipline in public officials and how they participate in things like this. I'll give you one example. I was at a particular global event where a 21-year-old lady was actually negotiating on behalf of Asia, a continent, but of course, what you see here, just one lady with about 5 other technocrats. But what you see in most of these contingents are not even technocrats. Most of these guys are political patronage and people who just hang around the presidential villa. And then, of course, when opportunities come like this, they just slot their names and that is it. They have no business, they have no technical capability, they have no technical capacity. If we ask for those names, you will realize that 3/4 of those names have no business whatsoever in climate-related conversation. Climate conversation is technical, it is deep, and it is for people who have indeed been part of this process all along. But when you just bring a cliche and you engage it because you want to satisfy or gratify, and that is what we see public office to have become. It has become an opportunity to gratify people, and that is the reason why that development has become our middle name, because even global community cannot understand why we suddenly just become too generous with public office giveaways and not doing what the right things are. So there is no technical depth. And after this COP28, people will just wait for the next one. Why? Because the entire learning and the reason there are private sector networking that should have happened, there are opportunities that should have been opened, there are civil society engagement that should attract funding into promoting climate-related conversation locally. The issue of fossil fuel in the Niger Delta, who is actually engaging it, who is talking about it, and of course, for me again, the protest about the country who is actually hosting and dealing with the issue of fossil fuel is something that also requires that we pay a lot of attention to. What is Nigeria doing with renewable energy? We don't even have anything close. We don't even have anything that deals with renewable energy, but yes, we are getting to do. So I think there is a lot that needs to be done. But one thing that is very clear was that that list was political and the trip was basically meant to satisfy political cronies, and that we must learn and deviate from. Otherwise, this is a bad footing for the president, and this is not something that should continue going forward.
Many people mention the name of the president's son, Sheyi. Some mention one celebrity, a singer. Yes, Toke Makunwa, yes, and quite a number of names there. And this is coming just a few months after the uproar following the large contingent from Nigeria to the United Nations General Assembly. Is the president and his handlers learning any lesson?
Unfortunately, I don't think they are. And I think it is also very important for the president to be to delineate what is business and what is family related. And I think he had actually raised this concern at one of the FEC meetings where I actually applauded him to have openly come out to say, look, even his son has no business with coming to FEC meetings. And that for me was very clear. So, but how he also made it into that list and how he also participated is something that requires additional investigation, and people should pay attention to it. I can guarantee you, tendencies are there that even the president might only just arrive there and see that his son also was there, because there is also this bureaucracy and the red tape around governance in this country, where even the president sometimes is caught unawares, and I think he also tried to deal with this kind of instance recently, when he even employed for himself a private secretary, considering the fact that he had noticed a number of misleading policies and programs that they have gotten him to sign off, which he never liked eventually. So he paid attention to those details. I think he learns from that. But I think there is also this resilience from people who fish from waters like this, from troubled water like this, and they will never relent. It is about consistency in impunity just to be able to also satisfy their own personal appetite. And it is very important that we reduce this and find a way to promote expenditure that would actually promote infrastructure. Because the first question that will come to mind is that what are the climate-related infrastructure that we have in this country that we also need to put monies into? If we do an analysis of that money that was spent, particularly going by that amount that has gone viral, would it not help us to have put a local framework in place to also show to the world that we are particularly very serious about climate action? But this is a country where at the time we muted the idea of importing grass just to feed our cows because we felt that that was the only way to go. That tells you this is the country where we see flare gas. We flare gas on a regular basis, and we are talking about climate action and spending money on contingent. But this is a country where all that we extract, and of course a lot of fire, what we call artisanal refining, is still ongoing in large chunks. This is still a country where oil theft is still happening in hundreds of thousands of barrels on a daily basis, and spills are happening. This is still a country where in the Niger Delta, people cannot fish, people cannot farm, people cannot. This is still a country where life expectancy on the Niger Delta is 11 years below national average. And we are talking about this contingent. This is still a country where maternal mortality has been reduced because of the level of benzene that has been released into the air in the Niger Delta. And we are talking about this country. This is still a country where people still consume water that is 900 times contaminated above the World Health Organization standard. And so what exactly are we talking about? This is still a country where women's reproductive system has been altered because of the level of pollution in the air. If you go to Kaduna Refinery and all the communities are joining that particular refinery, a lot of men can no longer perform their function as men anymore. Why? Because of the activities of the gas releases into that basis when that refinery was functional. And this is happening in Niger Delta. This is happening everywhere we have refining activities. And we are bringing this kind of, we are not serious as a government. And I think it is very important that somebody should paint this kind of picture and show them very clearly that what we should pay attention to are those local infrastructure that saves lives and not just going for jamboree. And this for me is one, because there is actually no direct connection to development efforts.
And how does this impact on the image of Nigeria abroad? Seeing one president with 1,143 or thereabout, other people all accompanying him for the event. How is it impacting on our image outside?
I thought the first thing that the president is actually doing since he assumed office is actually to market this particular country and market it well. He started well, but of course, like typical of any government of any regime, a time will come where there will be some level of shift in attention and concentration. But I think, to be very honest, there is no particular fantastic image that we enjoy out there. Of course, at the Committee of Nations, people just see us as very wasteful. And of course, we are very wasteful. If not, we won't be taking this large contingent. There are countries who are putting so much and into climate-related conversation in their own country. And then, of course, they do not even need to put this contingent. Nigeria is actually seeking to promote climate action, but unfortunately, my question would be that even the government itself who signed up that particular agreement is actually also polluting. The question again will come to say, look, all of these international oil corporations that are also operating here in this country. I know too well that we have weak frameworks, we have weak systems, and then of course they also go about in their own corner to talk about how very unserious and how very free to air it is like doing business in Nigeria. Why? Because you don't have any sanctions. We have put in Nesria, we have put in Nostra to be able to do. If you go to Nostra, that is an agency of government that is meant to reduce the level of spills in the community, in society. Nostra is actually not funded. I can guarantee you and say it in the open space that even Nostra does not have money to travel and do monitoring. And how would you have an agency committed to actually this kind of mandate and is not funded? Nostra at the time couldn't even pay their rent. And this is actually on national TV, so that at least government and AJ can go and verify it. So there is a government who cannot, the agency who should participate in helping to reduce those activities of climate, does not even know how to pay their rent. And we're doing this and paying this much, I think it is actually very annoying, and it is actually something that frustrates everybody who is part of governance in this country. We have seen the Sahel and how it is actually fast encroaching. We are not paying attention to it. We have seen how the Lake Chad Basin requires a recharge. We are not paying attention to it. We have seen how climate-related situation has contributed to insecurity in this country. We are not paying attention to it. But look at what we are doing as a country. And does that take us serious? The lives of people who have actually been lost as a result of farmer-herders conflict. Herders have only moved because of the challenge with climate-related issues. And then, of course, looking for lush field to graze on. But to look at what we are doing, for me, this is not a country that is actually committed to its own development. I think this country requires a little bit of a retrospect and look inward and find some mojo to be able to move ahead. But currently, we are not doing the right thing at all.
Okay, we are rounding up, and I want you to answer the next question in less than 1 minute. Of course, before the president left the shores of Nigeria, his handlers said that he's going to address the world there. Just yesterday, we had the Minister of Foreign Affairs saying that it was at the venue that the president decided not to address the world because he understands that they are only repeating what was said last year. This is one side. The other side of the question is handlers of the president kept saying that he went with less than 100 people, who were sponsored by the government. All others sponsored themselves. Are these claims actually reconcilable?
And that is where, for me, it is very good to have a transparent communication on the subjects like this. If government had said this is the number of people that they have paid for, they should publish the evidence. It's a confidence building. Strategic communication is at the heart of governance. And I think it is very important for them to think that it is not too much for them to do. You recall that when we were actually taking out some of our Nigerians from Sudan, and those guys were claiming that we had not paid, and they left most of our brothers and sisters in the Sahel. Remember that the government actually published the transactions so that people will know that, look, they have made the payment, but because certain things have changed between, that was why that didn't happen. So it is not out of place if government decides to publish and say, look, these are the people who were on the Nigerian contingent, so that we know and agree. Strategic communication, transparency, accountability, integrity. These are the core mandates that this government leverage on. Otherwise, it will be difficult for them to be able to build confidence amongst the people.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, for your informed perspective on this raging issue. And we hope to have you some other time. Yes, and viewers, we earlier had Akintunde Babatunde, the Director of Programs at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, CJID, and lately Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, a public commentator. They all harped on transparency in government, and we hope that what they said will resonate with those that matter. And that's a wrap on today's package. We sincerely hope you found the conversation engaging and informative. And rest assured to join us or Daily Politics Live, airing every weekday, and also our special package on Friday, during which we open our telephone line for you to comment on national issues. Once again, we thank you for joining. Bye-bye for now. I'm Hamza Idris.